Hi, I'm Professor Janice Collins of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Welcome to A Taste of Gullah. I'm so glad you could join me. You know, there's a wonderful, somewhat hidden treasure right here in America that I'd like to tell you a little bit about. It's believed to be hundreds and hundreds of years old, and in some way, shape, or form, you're probably connected to it. I'm speaking of the Gullah culture. What's Gullah, you may ask? Well, you may not think you know anything about the Gullah culture, but if you've ever eaten chocolate-covered peanuts called goobers, perhaps at the movies, or if you've ever dipped into a delicious pot of gumbo, have you heard the story of the tortoise and the hare? How about this? Have you ever heard of the Disney character Uncle Remus? Have you heard of him? Okay, wait, I have one for you. Have you ever sung a verse or two or 10 of Michael Row Your Boat to Shore, or everyone's campfire favorite, Kumbaya? Well, if you have, I'm pleased to inform you that you indeed have at least experienced, indirectly perhaps, a little Gullah culture by the way of Africa. The Gullah people are believed to be the first Africans to touch the Low Country region, better known by the locals as the lowlands or sea islands, which once stretched from North Carolina to Florida. Well, I wanted to capture parts of this culture in all its splendor with stories by and about its own people. So beginning in 2009, I headed down south during my spring breaks for 3 weeks. In 1-week intervals, I started to record sights and sounds of Gullah. I met wonderful people and I had a wonderful time. And with all the footage and sights and sounds, being the professor, I decided to make this a series of webisodes that others could enjoy online. The series was edited in an independent study class by some wonderful students, Mr. Jave Liu, Miss Alexis Rosado, and Miss Andrea Medina. It was their first time participating in the production of such vignettes, and I think they did a wonderful job. Now, with a small bit of re-editing for television broadcasting, and with the blessings of each and every person you will be introduced to in this program, I bring you a taste of Gullah. Enjoy. Yes, the Gullah culture is truly ubiquitous in the South, even in places like Hardeeville, a small little town, nice and quaint, just a few miles from Beaufort, where I stayed and met with some of the nicest people, like Dollar General store manager Nathaniel Wright, or just Nate. If I were to ask you, are you related to the Gullah culture, the Gullah people?
Yeah, I am.
You are what?
Related to them.
You're related to the Gullah people? The Gullah culture?
I know I am. Now, how far back, I don't know, but pretty much everybody around here has some kind of root tied into the Gullah people, family.
Nate was born and raised right here in Hardeeville, which is also known as Little Savannah, or Slowville. Because it's nice and slow in the living's easy?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty much easy. It's very easy.
Hardeeville is not exactly traditionally known as Gullah country, but it really doesn't matter because the non-tangible elements, the spirit of Gullah, permeates the walls of any store, house, or village. Nate says it's about knowing who you are and your traditions.
The heritage, the root, everything from the upbringing, from the different planning and the different foods and everything. Everything
that encompasses your beginning.
Yeah, my thing is, like my mom always told me, if you don't know where you're from, you're not gonna know where you're going.
The Gullah people, the history and the heritage rolls down the water-lined highways and roads of the Southeast and onto the shores, places, and people who, like Nate, keep the spirit alive.
Ladies, don't keep them pocketbooks on the floor. You never have no money. I heard that. Just an old Gullah Geechee belief.
Yes, the many beliefs that may be in our own narratives. We just didn't know that they originated before our mothers and grandmothers, and that they came to the U.S. from Africa. Tour guide Al Miller in Savannah, Georgia, keeps the spirit alive by sharing what he knows about all the sayings and goings of the Gullah Island.
New Year's Day, never let that woman be the first to enter the house. It must be a man.
For over 20 years, he's been one of the leading tour guides of the Gullah Lowland and Highlands and the owner of Sights and Insights Tours since 1993. Miller says his love of the Gullah culture and its people started early.
It all extends from high school. When I studied South Carolina history, I was just fascinated with all this history about Charleston because Charleston was actually the beginning, even though today Columbia is the capital.
Tour by tour, Al Miller has passed on historical and cultural information that is important and a bit interesting.
Used years ago to go to the bathroom in the slop jar, the pecan, the piss pot, okay? Now, a lot of whites called it the honey bucket, the honey pot, the thunder jug, the chamber pot, and then some call it the potty. The sophisticated whites in this city call this unnecessary. That sounds good, doesn't it? Bring me the necessary.
The necessary. So there are the beliefs, the mores, and traditions. Then there are the beliefs and the language itself mixed in with a little Southern pride. For example, Miller was born in Mullins, South Carolina, a little town north of Charleston, so in some ways he would be seen as an outsider and referred to in that manner.
So the locals look at me and say, look a yama benya, you a come ya. See, a benya means that you came here. Come ya means that you came here.
The language is an Emic term known as Geechee, also called Sea Island Creole. This way of speaking is related to Jamaican patois, Barbadian dialect, Bahamian dialect, Belizean Creole, and the Creole language of Sierra Leone in West Africa. It's a mixture of speech patterns, and it sounds that way.
Gal, where you come ya for? That means, what are you here for? You here to take a tour, okay? Yeah. Now, when we go into a lot of these old black neighborhoods, guess what they like to say, gal? Them tourists come us in we neighborhood, act like they ain't want to be mopping from their mouth some way. Meaning those tourists coming in our neighborhoods act as if they don't want to speak to us, they must be northerners.
The meanings and interpretations of Gullah and Geechee have varied, but Miller says it's all about location, location, location.
See, it's just that Gullah and Geechee were more prevalent along the South Carolina and along the Georgia coast. So if you live closest to the ocean, you're more considered to be a saltwater Geechee or a lowland Geechee. If you live farther away from the coast, then you are considered to be a highland Geechee or a freshwater Geechee. And this is why a lot of blacks find that word to be derogatory, because so many outsiders look at those who are Gullah Geechee as being ignorant, stupid, backwards, silly.
But they were anything but. Like other slaves who came to the U.S., the Africans who made up the Gullah people were brought here for their excellent skills and intelligence when it came to crop production, the production and use of indigo, fishing skills, and overall intelligence and know-how to live and prosper off of the land. Tasks, skills, and intelligence that provided the very survival of the slave owners and early European settlers. They weren't ignorant. They were Africans in a new place who spoke a particular language and provided essential byproducts that helped develop America. But just like Nate, Miller says, it's not only about the culture, it's also about the palate.
Just the culture itself, the food, the way of life, all these practices and beliefs that's just been passed down from one generation to the next.
Well, I wanted to experience both. More of the culture and definitely more of the food. So I headed to two places I knew I could get both, the Gullah Grub and the Gullah Festival. First, getting something great to eat. As I was making my way down the roads of South Carolina, Sea Island Parkway, I decided to venture into St. Helena Island, a Gullah island. On my way there, I passed near Paris Island, a place that was once Gullah-owned that now serves as training grounds for the United States Marines. Anyway, I was hungry and I was looking for some real authentic Gullah seafood. And there it was, the Gullah Grub. The Gullah Grub is nationally known, internationally known as a matter of fact, and has been profiled on network programs such as Martha Stewart's Living and visited by well-known chef extraordinaire Anthony Bourdain. The owner is Chef Bill Green. Chef Green opened this restaurant around 15 years ago. And here at the Gullah Grub, their motto is eat healthy, Eat local, eat fresh, and eat in season. So that's exactly what I did. I ordered a little bit of everything. Fried shark, shrimp with rice, greens of course, mashed potatoes and cornbread, and I washed it all down with something they call swamp water. Yes, swamp water. It's not as bad as it sounds. It's really just a mixture of lemonade and tea. And I tell you what, everything was delicious. With my stomach full, I sat down to talk with Oshie Green, the daughter of Chef Green, who's been working in the kitchen since the day it opened. I quickly learned that here at the Grub, just like everything Gullah, it's a family affair. Everyone chips in and helps when they can and however they can. There's an older brother named Bubba, whose actual name is William Green III, his wife Courtney, and their newest addition, Zaria, Oshie, and a family friend named Bruce, who's a dishwasher and all-around great helper. There's also another brother named Jamie, who wasn't in the kitchen that day because, according to Oshie, she says he just can't cook to save his soul. Oshie tells me that the beginning of the Gullah Grub kind of just happened. It happened when her daddy went down to make a proposal for a side gig of cooking for the local folks.
But I told him, I said, when you go down there, you're never going to come back because you're just going to fall in love with the area. Because it's like what Charleston used to be before it became more tourist friendly.
In other words, locally authentic. No frills or anything over the top, just good cooking by good folks.
It kind of changed for the newcomers versus keeping the old ways. And that's what Buford has done and is trying to continue to do.
Oshie says that buying land to settle on while trying to build a business was a little tricky. And this uneasiness dates back to an element that is pervasive in the Gullah culture, to trust or not trust the outsider.
He was able to find land that was reasonable because like here, it's not so much real estate or dealing with realtors, there you go. It's mostly dealing with individuals because a lot of them don't trust the real estate agents because these lands have been in their family for generations after generation, and they just want to make sure that there's nobody's going to come in and build a big condo or drive up the property taxes.
In 2000, the Gullah Geechee officially became an internationally recognized nation, but the tax hikes are making it impossible for the indigenous group to continue to live there. Throughout the media, ABC News, NBC News, CNN, and online, the reports about the threats to this culture, they are real and sometimes unimaginable. Some say the heightened property taxes are threatening the Gullah culture into extinction. Oshie says that it's just not about the tax hikes, though. It's still a trust issue. It's about individuals wanting to build communities while breaking down communities at the same time. Has it gotten any better or?
No. And the reason why it hasn't gotten really any better is because of my generation, and the ones to come, and the generation before mine, Unless you're an elder, you really don't have the appreciation that you need to have for land.
Which means people sell. Oshie goes on to say it's even a bit racial, meaning what is taught to one group is not necessarily taught to the other.
I think in a white culture, you were taught that without land, you have no roots. Well, in our culture, it's not that way. We kind of focusing on the easier access things. We want the outside appearance versus, okay, yeah, it may not look like I have a lot, but I have this piece of land. And if anything happens, this is mine. No one can take that from me. And with the generations that came after our elders, they kind of lost that way. So when that happens, the elders can't really talk for themselves. They can't really speak for themselves.
Not only can they not speak for themselves, there seems to be a disconnection between the mainland and Sea Island people and the policies. There's also a disconnection between generations who still live on the islands and the ones who have moved away. And all of these elements simply exacerbate the situation.
Can't really speak for themselves. They don't really know their rights. And without the new generation saying, hey, Ma, you don't have to sell this. There are organizations out there. There are, grants that we can get. Our house is over 100 years old. They can't tear this down. It's historic now. Without having someone tell you that, you don't know.
One thing that is known is that even if the young generation wanted to buy and own land for preservation reasons, Because of unfair tax hikes that have always been a threat, achieving this dream is almost impossible. And because of these threatening situations, it is even more imperative to record the Gullah culture while it still exists. It's like losing a bit of American history each time a family sells, moves, or a business closes. But there is still hope, even if it's just the hope of understanding and clarification.
We want the American dream, but not realizing that it was on our backs that American dream was able to come to light.
For now, the American dream still lives on at the Gullah Grub. And as I make my way from this place of good eating and lots of history, I could hear them calling me, saying, "Take a hana for come," which means, "Thank you for coming." No worries, I'll be back. Just outside the doors of the Gullah Grub, another part of their rich history lives in the hands of Jerry Taylor. Jerry is an internationally known authentic sweetgrass and bulrush basket weaver, and most weekends and quite a few weekdays, you can find her sitting on this porch pulling, turning, and twisting hand-picked material into beautiful baskets, using a technique that originated in Sierra Leone, West Africa. In fact, this technique of weaving cannot be found in a book. The secrets to weaving these baskets have been passed down from person to person, generation to generation, from Africa to America for more than 3 centuries. Jerry learned the technique from a very special lady.
For me to have gotten started with this, I was taught by my grandmother. We lived in Mount Pleasant. When I first got started with this, it was in Boone Hall Plantation, where we lived at the time, and we got started, doing basket.
And the baskets take a lot of effort and a lot of patience.
Like a small basket, how long would that normally take you?
Well, there is, it's a question that people ask that you cannot give an answer to. Baskets take time to make. I can't say it's going to take 40 hours in whatever, because it depends on the style, it depends on the size of a basket, but this is not something that we time. It's never about the time when it comes to the Africans. It's about getting the work done. So it's whatever time it takes to get that piece done that you're working on. We don't have any particular time. It's from beginning of a basket to the ending of a basket. That's what it takes.
It's amazing to watch how the age techniques of her African ancestors can create something so beautiful and new, one twist at a time. Even the spoon Jerry uses relates to the past. Hundreds of years ago, instead of the spoon, they used to use animal bones. Bones from maybe a pig or a cow. And then they switched over to nails and glass. And to this day, though, no matter the tool one chooses to use to make these gorgeous baskets, the tool itself is still called the nail bone.
In these baskets, in the materials, you have to get it just right, After cutting or pulling our materials, when getting the pine straw, when it comes to the palmetto, everything has to be done just right in order for we to do these baskets. It have to have a certain flexibility in order for us to get it just the way we need it. Yeah, so the sweetgrass has to be dried. The bulrush, after cutting it, needs to be dry. The palmetto, it has a moisture in it that it has to come out of it before we use it. So everything that we use has to be done and has to be dry in a certain way in order for us to do it, use it.
It takes time, patience, and a little thing we call physical aptitude.
Oh, it's physical. It's physical. Yeah, I climbed the tree in order to cut the very center of the palmetto tree in order for me to use it to, make the baskets.
And what beautiful baskets they are. Each one made with special attention by Jerry, one basket at a time. After all of the hard work and time that she puts into making these baskets, I had to ask her one question. I wondered what she thought her grandmother would say.
Well, it's a tradition, and this is what we have done. But the wonderful thing that I, could remember, that my grandmother have taught me, it's still, give me that appreciation to know that my grandmother have taught me all it is, into, collecting material as well as making the baskets.
So she would probably say, job well done.
Job well done.
Job well done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Whew. A job well done indeed. At the end of the day, Jerry invited me to a backyard party. No, a house party. Well, maybe a picnic. I'm not sure what you would call it. Let's just say she took me to see some great people on the Sea Islands for a great time, great music, and again, some great eating. There were even 2 stocked electric refrigerators out in the backyard just for our convenience. It really was a wonderful time with people that I seem to feel like it's family. Well, now that my stomach is full and with great food from the grub and great food from the picnic, in the backyard, of course, and great conversation thanks to Jerry Taylor, it was time to do some walking to work everything off. So I headed down to the Gullah Festival. Every year and every month of May, the celebration of the Gullah culture happens at Beaufort's Gullah Festival. The sights and sounds are explosive. The weekend-long festival showcases the African history and heritage of South Carolina's low-country Gullah culture with a delicious blend of West African, European, and Native American cultures. There's music, dancing, singing, and lots of vendors selling everything from shea butter to black soap. Of course, there's even more food to eat, rhythmic sounds on CDs, artwork, masks, you name it. They probably have it. And it all comes together from all over the world, right here in Beaufort. On my walk through Vendor Valley, I met this striking woman from Senegal, West Africa. Her name was Yazil. I stopped by for a short little chat. And how long have you been here?
America, 10 years.
And do you like it?
Yeah, I'm like it.
Yes.
I'm like it.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Can I get a shot of your outfit? And as I continued to move through the crowd, I heard the sounds of drums in the distance. Following the beats, I stumbled upon a group rehearsing for a performance. I didn't want to interrupt their practice time, but I noticed tribal scars on one young man's face and wanted to know, where did they come from?
So far BC, I can't even say, but travelers came from Egypt and Ethiopia, that area, and not really Ethiopia had their own thing going on, but from the Egypt area, traveled down with a couple of other high priests and went to Yoruba land, Nigeria, started the Yoruba speaking people, started the ancestor worship, started the markings, and, from there, from Nigeria, it's like in Ghana.
So their spiritual affiliation was Yoruba, and the sounds, the drums, and the chants began to sound like music. A preview of what's to come. The next day, there was nothing but more music, more dancing, and then more dancing and more music. It was really nice seeing everyone come together and just have a good time. And then the African dancers took to the stage.
Arts and Dance Ensemble. We hope you enjoyed yourself.
There was another performer on stage who is internationally known. Marquetta L. Goodwine is known as Queen Quet, the elected chiefess of the Gullah Geechee Nation. This St. Helena Island native is an author, preservationist, and a performing artist. Queen Quet has spoken before the United Nations on human rights and provides historical consultation of documentaries and mainstream movies, such as The Patriot, starring Mel Gibson. During her performance, Queen Quet spoke directly to the issue of being Gullah, portrayed as something negative by speaking a positive note of survival.
God has put on all of us as African people, and this International Year of African Descent, where we can give thanks. We are still here. When other people wanted us annihilated, they wanted us not to know who we were. They wanted us not to respect one another. You are here because we do. Stand up if you know what I'm talking about today. And if you don't know
messages from Queen Quet: love yourself, love others, and never forget where you came from.
We don't want the circle to be forgotten. These baskets carry our story. They carry who we are. When our mothers carried us from the womb, they put us in these baskets. They had us in the fields when they worked, when they picked the cotton. And everybody here wearing cotton, whether we can see it or not. So remember, Sea Island cotton, the Carolina gold rice, the indigo were not only the cash crop commodity, but also we were. Because we are black. What? What? Black gold, that means we are richness, and we be Gullah Geechee, anointed people, blessed and free. Gullah Festival family, I love you. So that's why I'm elected as your head of state, to do that, to help all my people and bring us all back to being one family that truly has come this far by faith.
And ended with a dance of dedication.
I still believe it's Sunday dinners and maybe thanks before you eat. I still believe in breastfeeding babies, looking both ways before you cross the street. I still believe in taking care of grandma, not sending her to no damn nursing home. Yeah. And I still believe in whooping kids, cause sometimes that's the only thing that they gon' get it. And I still believe in miracles, still believe in magic and rainbows, still believe in family, the laws of gravity, and where there's a will, there's a way. And I still believe in Santa Claus, no, not the man. I believe in the principle of giving back to community, rebuilding family, make this world a better place. I still believe in church on Sunday and praying for you go to sleep. I still believe in teaching by example, cause kids mimic what they see. I still believe in homeschool, washing your hands after you go to the bathroom, yeah. And I still believe in prayer changes things. Something about getting on your knees. Still believe in miracles, still believe in magic and rainbows, still believe in family, the laws of gravity, and where there's a will, there's a way. And I still believe in Santa Claus, no, not the man. I believe in the principle of giving back to community, rebuilding family, make this world a better place. I still believe one soul, one voice, one people united together. Still believe one faith, one love, one rule, cause nobody lives forever. And that it can better and better. And I know we will, so why raise my voice and I still
Queen Quet's presentation appeared to affect everyone's spirit, the adults as well as the children. For 25 years, the Gullah Festival has brought people from near and far to the shores of South Carolina, just to celebrate a part of history and its people, much like other American festivals. And as night fell, I closed out my night listening to the wonderful Manhattans, singing love songs for couples in love to sway to, dancing under the stars. I made a quick stop inside an art museum to look at the beautiful African and Gullah artwork, and slowly made my way back to the hotel, feeling so full in so many ways. During the Gullah Festival, lots of artists come out to show what they do best, like Hank D. Herring.
I call myself an artist. I use a multimedia artist because for my art, I incorporate everything that comes within my touch.
And in true Gullah style, it's the personal touch of each creation that makes it special.
I made my own press to pull my prints.
Pulling whatever he can find from his surroundings to create what he calls green art.
A lot of my pieces are made from rescued materials. But this piece here was working with papers, different kind of paints to create a piece that would give the illusion of more than what it is. I will use anything that I can pick up to create an image, and it's true art.
Art can also be seen in the creation of gourds by Mary Moore Anderson. Mary says her roots can be traced 5 generations back to the state of Virginia. Her great-great-great-grandfather and his brother were brought here to South Carolina as slaves to work on the Moore plantation.
My father's aunt, her name was Eva. She lived in Chester, South Carolina. She used to have a large gourds out in her cabinet that she kept her rice in, flour. I fell in love with those gourds. I may have been about 12 years old. Gourds are in the cucumber, pumpkin, and squash family. They are actually all containers that came from Africa.
Mary continued to have a fondness for gourds throughout her life, but she never really did anything with them until she turned 50.
2 days after my 50th birthday, I took that gourd down and I made my first piece of art out of gourds.
And she's continued to nurture this way of crafting ever since.
So what I did was I started making these gourds and I said, Lord, I really do love these things. And then one day I took time to go to an outdoors festival in Chester, South Carolina. A young lady came down the street and she stood over and she watched me for a few minutes. Then she turned around and she went back. And then maybe about a half an hour or so later, she came back.
This woman eventually praised Mary for her work and invited her to speak at her church for Black History Month. Her testimony was not just to her art, but to the one she believes created her as a special piece during a trying time.
Because I had had a stroke and I had some surgery because I had gotten paralyzed on one side from a fall.
But she continued to pray for recovery and a way to get back to her crafting. Well, she did both, and she did them well, and right after her testimony,
believe me, I was shocked. Her brother came up and he handed me a check for $300.
Mary continues to give her testimony by continuing to do her work to be shared with anyone who's willing to stop by and take a look, one gourd at a time. Book author Patricia B. from South Carolina knows a lot about the Gullah culture.
The Gullah culture is very, very rich in the sense that it represents everything that embodies the history of the Africans who came to this area before we had bridges. So a lot of what we do basically represents the language, the culture, the food, the way of life, the traditions, etc. Church ceremonies, the way we do weddings, the way we even mourn for the ones who have gone on. So we have a very, very, very rich culture.
Like many of the people I talked to during my trip through the festival, Patricia's family roots run deep on the Sea Islands, like Beaufort.
I am very, very proud to say that my family members actually lived on these islands before we had bridges. So you can imagine that the dialect that you may even hear when I speak is basically because the Gullah language itself represents the language that came with our enslaved People before we had direct contact with the mainland, so we have lots of the African root words mixed with a little English, and that comes about to bringing the Gullah language itself.
And Patricia has found a way to capture this language in an authentic way so that it can be shared by others, and so that others can be educated and entertained by another part of American history. She writes Gullah-focused books.
Mama says our family is just like Grandma's stew. Each has a unique flavor, not the same of any two. Like the Vidalia onion, some of us are mild, oftentimes we're quiet, and occasionally we smile. But like a clove of garlic, some of us are more distinct. When given an opportunity, we say just what we think. We all strive for excellence. We work while having fun. But like the ham or neck bone, some take longer to get done. But like the carrot or the pea, all of us are so very sweet. And it's because of that special blend that this Gullah family is complete.
Spoken like a true Southerner who has now made me hungry again. This time, hungry for more stories, though. By this time in my trip, I have met so many people, but one thing they all say in my interviews, one thing they all believe in, as they would say, know from whence you came round here.
And it does not matter what I may face. I believe, as my cousin told me, you've come from good stock, the Gullah culture.
Well said, Miss B. And after all that, I believe this is a good time to go to church with Aunt Pearlie Sue, don't you? Beautiful summer day down in the lowlands when I met the infamous Aunt Pearlie Sue. Aunt Pearlie Sue is the theatrical creation of Anita Joyce Singleton Prather. I should say Reverend Anita Joyce Singleton Prather, a native of the Sea Islands in Beaufort County, South Carolina. She's lively, energetic, entertaining, soulful, and full of information, just like her stories.
Well, we just want to welcome you. Decoration Day. Say Decoration Day. Decoration Day. Turn to neighbor. Say neighbor. Neighbor. Oh neighbor. Oh neighbor. You think you come for see our Pearlie Sue? You come for see our Pearlie Sue? Say wrong answer. Wrong answer. Say this is a family reunion. We just want to welcome you home. You know, if you can't get home to Mother Africa, this is the second best place. Tell them, 3 out of 4 y'all came through these ports of Carolina, so you're just back home. And we're so glad you finally found us. My brothers over there and Sierra Leone said, we was looking for the Gullah people. Can you see me? That's why I like bright colors, because I don't want y'all to miss me again.
For a solid 2 hours within the walls of the Tabernacle Baptist Church, Aunt Pearlie Sue entertains and educates a congregation of locals and tourists on a history that is rarely told, but oh so important. The story about how, as a people, all people are connected by fate and by blood. How we're all just regular kinfolk, but there was always a beginning.
Be your eyes blue before motion long. You know, before y'all get them little contact lenses. You know, before your hair was blonde, before dark, you know, before Miss Clairol, y'all understand. You understand? All of that. Before we were anything else, be it African American, Asian, Hispanic, Caucasian, whatever you call yourself. Before you were any of those things, all of us were just Africans. Isn't it awesome? It is a common denominator for all of us. So if you didn't know you was a Gullah kinfolk before you got in this place, you'll know before you left from y'all. So God bless you, and welcome to Decoration Day 2011.
Today we call it Memorial Day, but in the 1800s, Anita says it was known as Decoration Day in honor of the fallen Union soldiers during the Civil War. I got a chance to talk with Anita a little bit later, out of costume, but yet still full of history.
It was a big thing for the blacks and northern whites. Southern whites didn't celebrate Decoration Day because the birth of Decoration Day was Abraham Lincoln designated these 29 acres here that made up the original National Cemetery here as the final resting place for those who fought to preserve the Union. So, of course, since the Southerners didn't fight to preserve the Union at that time, they didn't celebrate. They celebrated May 10th, which was considered Confederate Memorial Day. That was Jefferson Davis's birthday. And so Memorial Day, what we call Memorial Day now, used to be just called Decoration Day because it was decorating the graves.
The graves were decorated by some of the first black women to be freed during the Civil War. These African American women, along with their European American sisters, made up the Women's Relief Corps.
Served all the Union soldiers. But when the war was over, those U.S., if you go in the National Cemetery, you see USCT, which stands for United States Colored Troops. Those colored troops, they felt like were going to be forgotten. And so they wanted to make sure that we did not forget the sacrifice that they made to become, especially the ones that were here in Beaufort, became the first infantry of black soldiers for the Civil War. And so the Women's Relief Corps took on the duty of caring for those veterans, those colored veterans, and when they died, to make sure that their graves were taken care of and decorated. So gave birth to Decoration Day.
And Anita's grandmother was a part of the Women's Relief Corps. Down these streets, there would be parties, parades, decorations, good food, music, and fellowship. But before any of this could happen, the Sunday before, the locals would march down to the waters.
Sunday, always the Sunday before Decoration Day, they would always have the march to the sea, where we'd go to the waterfront and we would throw flowers out in the water for the unknown soldiers that had been killed, because we wanted to make sure, and that's African tradition, because we hold it sacred.
During the memorial celebration, people would listen to the reading of the Gettysburg's Address and moving speeches by some of the greats like Booker T. Washington, General Robert Smalls, and William T. Sherman. Anita makes sure the celebration continues in her plays, the church, even on the street she grew up on, and in the house she grew up in. It's a legacy full of stories that will be carried on by the young generation, even if they are learning by playing.
I know today they're excited about playing and that kind of stuff, so it's kind of hard to tell them. So what I did yesterday, I took my grandkids to the National Cemetery, because both of my parents are buried over there. My father was in the Navy, so both of my parents are buried over there. So again, every year I kind of go through the history, and I kind of connect to what I say during our production of Decoration Day to actual spots.
So besides being a part of the Gullah Festival, the children are being taught the history year-round. Sometimes it's hard for young people to remember historical facts while playing and jumping and getting cooled down in the hot southern summer sun. And Anita kind of remembers just those times growing up, preferring to have fun rather than going to the National Cemetery.
Well, first of all, I was scared of dead people. I didn't want to go to no cemetery. But my grandmother made me go. But it was enough excitement about the day that by the time I got up in age to realize how sacred all the different components were, then it gave me just enough of a remnant that says, okay, let me go do some research into my history.
She discovered a way to join the two important elements, fun and history, all in the name of education and legacy.
So now that's what I'm hoping to leave with these children. They may not know all the history, but they're going to say, we did something special on Memorial Day. And I kept hearing, Miss Purse or something say about Decoration Day. And they're going to make the connection, and they're going to do their research. And that's our responsibility, to at least give them a nugget that they can hold on to, a hook. And so that's what I try to do with this.
And through the Gullah songs of youth and sounds of youthful laughter, the history is being remembered and developed slowly, one child at a time.
And what's the best part about Decoration Day for you?
Having fun, seeing a bunch of friends and family.
It's special because all the kids get to come together as one and play around, having fun and doing their other things that are really fun.
And it's really fun to be with family and just run around everywhere and just get away from school for that one day.
The kids remembered many things about this celebration, and everyone was excited to share the knowledge. So excited that I had to recruit one of my own interviewees, Jada, to act as a reporter.
What was the best part about Decoration Day?
Is that we're celebrating about how a lot of our people are trying to fight for us. That's what I liked about celebrating about this project.
What was your favorite part about Decoration Day?
My favorite part about Decoration Day was the show, the play at Tabernacle about how Tabernacle Baptist Church, and how they showed what happened during the Civil Wars and stuff, about how did the soldiers try to keep us safe and protected. And that's what we did. We went over to the cemetery, and the people over there told us about how good the soldiers were, good for us and all. Yeah, that's my favorite part.
That was the long answer. So without any prompting, I think my reporter thought it would be a good idea to ask that question again, but in a different way.
What do you think Decoration Day is really about?
It's about saying thank you to the soldiers for protecting us during all the wars.
What was your favorite part about Decoration Day?
My favorite part about Declaration Day is when all the people signed the paper for freedom rights.
The sound bites were funny, innocent, a little historical, and moving. And my reporter, I must say, she did a fantastic job.
My name is Jada Fair Shepherd, and I'm your reporter for Decoration Day in Beaufort, South Carolina. Thank you.
And if we can give our kids an understanding of who they are and how they fit in the scheme of things called America, even with all the inequalities, that there is a special place just for you. And you know what that connection is. And when you understand that your history didn't start with just these 400 years of slavery here, that you are the fathers and you are the mothers of all humanity, and your history go back to the beginning of time, then that root goes deep. So when life comes, and we know life is going to happen with all of its bad things, the good and the ugly, it's going to come. You can stand the test of time. So you may bend a little bit, but you won't break. And if the root is always there, even when the top gets cut off, it'll bring forth new life. And that's what education does.
And the roots are and have been strong and full of fortitude and determination for generations past and generations to come, thanks to people like the Reverend Singleton Prather.
Better known as Aunt Pearlie Sue, Gullah storyteller, historian, researcher, and lover of Jesus. Just one. We just pray God say, one more time, He allow you to come back. One more time. Oh, what a grand time. Decoration Day. And it's because of some folks reminiscing about what Decoration Day was all about. We now celebrate Memorial Day, and we have this wonderful festival called Gullah Fest. It was birthed right out of this Decoration Day. Now it's time to go home now. Having a reunion, I told you that's what it was. Yeah, you won't see them again until next year. You know, if they have to come by wagon, one lady said, her mama would put red wagon on lay with a whole year in Western Island. Make sure she had a way. Her babies to come to town. Decoration. Oh yeah. If you had to walk, you came by boat, by train, even oxen, you want to make it into town. A Decoration Day. I asked a young woman, I met a couple of years ago. She was from the Charleston, Mount Pleasant area. I said, you remember about Decoration Day? And I guess she was about 65 or so. She said, sure, baby, I remember. I said, well, what you remember? She said, I remember I was drunk up. I said, drunk up? I said, well, how did you get here? Who sponsored the trip? She said, the church. I said, the church? I said, what the pastor said? She said, yeah, they've been drunk up too.